Humans are small, soft, and they smile too much, Warlord Cortal muttered, his barbed talons tapping against the hollow map of the Veil Rift. His war council stood in a ring of light around him, their scaled hides glistening under the amber glow. They're like hatchlings, adorable, harmless. The Zoran tactical officer cleared his throat, a nervous, rasping sound. With respect, Warlord, 3 Dominion war cruisers have just been destroyed. Cortal's red eyes snapped up. By what? Mining drones, the officer said, voice trembling. They had attached themselves to the hulls and detonated. Silence swept the command deck. Cortal's spines flared. They strapped bombs to construction equipment? Who does that? Humans, apparently, the officer replied, his gills twitching. Cortal growled low in his throat. He had crushed a dozen frontier species. None had dared such undignified tactics. He turned the stars glowing on the holomap. Terran colonies marked in pale blue. Find me the leader of their fleet. I want to see the face of the creature who thinks this is war. Captain Arya Vance stood in the dim bridge of the TSF Resolute, her fingers curling around the armrest of her command chair as she watched debris scatter across the rift's edge. The 3 Dominion war cruisers had gone up like fireworks, mining drones detonating at point-blank range. It had been risky, but risk was survival out here. Her XO, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, smirked as he studied the tactical display. That should make them think twice before calling us harmless. Or make them angrier, Vance said, her tone even. Her voice always carried that edge of calm, like steel cooled in water. Status of our hull plating? Still holding, Captain. Minimal damage. Those drones were worth every scrap of salvage. She nodded. Improvisation was the only weapon humanity had in this war. The Terran Defense Force was young, barely 50 years old, still assembling its fleet from repurposed freighters and corporate haulers. Against the Dominion's war machines, they looked like gnats. But gnats could bleed giants if they were clever enough. The comms officer turned sharply. Captain, incoming transmission from the Dominion flagship. Vance arched an eyebrow. Patch it through. The screen flickered and Cortal's reptilian face filled the display, ridged jaw tight, eyes like molten coals. He stared at her as if she were a curiosity in a cage. You are human, Cortal said slowly, as though tasting the word. Small, fragile, yet you have the audacity to destroy my war cruisers with toys. Vance smiled, a disarmingly warm human smile. Funny thing about toys, Warlord, they're harmless until you put sharp edges on them. Cortal's spines rattled in irritation. Your species is weak. I will carve through your colonies, take your worlds, and turn your kind into servants. You cannot stop me. Vance leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. You came to our space, uninvited, assuming we'd roll over because we're new to the stars. Let me save you the trouble of learning the hard way. We don't roll over. We dig in. We fight back. And we don't stop until our enemies regret being born. Cortal's jaw twitched, a faint snarl curling through his voice. I am giving you one chance, Terran. Surrender your fleet and your colonies, or I will make your people watch their worlds burn. Warlord, Vance said evenly, you think we're adorable because we smile when we're afraid. But here's the thing. Sometimes we smile when we're about to do something you'll never forget. With that, she cut the transmission. The bridge went quiet, her crew staring at her with a mix of awe and anticipation. Ma'am, Hale said after a beat, remind me never to be on the other side of that smile. The rift nebula glimmered beyond the viewing pane, a churning sea of violet mist and silver streaks of plasma storms. It was both a sanctuary and a trap. Sense interference meant even Dominion ships struggled to navigate it. For Vance, that was an advantage. Helm, she ordered. Take us deeper into the rift. We're setting the board for round 2. Yes, Captain. The pilot's hands danced over the controls. The Resolute eased forward, its matte black hull reflecting faint flashes of nebular light. Vance studied the tactical map, hovering in front of her. Dominion fleets were massing at the rift's mouth. 20 ships. Maybe more. The Terran Defense Force? 5 ships, including hers. But every single one of them carried captains who'd grown up under the shadow of a hostile galaxy. They weren't going to give up because of numbers. She opened a channel to the fleet. This is Vance. We bloodied them today. That's good, but don't let it fool you. They'll come back twice as hard. Our job isn't just to win. It's to make sure they remember that humans are the wrong species to corner. A chorus of acknowledgments filled the comm line. No cheers, no grand speeches, just steady, hard voices. That was enough. Later, in the captain's ready room, Hale lingered by the doorway, his expression cautious. You think the Dominion is going to take you seriously after this? Van sat back, her eyes distant but sharp. They're not used to prey fighting back. That's our edge. We don't fit into their script. He grinned. Adorable monsters, huh? Vance's mouth quirked. If that's what they want to call us, let them. I'd rather be underestimated. Gives us room to hit harder. Hours later, the Dominion War Council reconvened. Cortal stood over the wreckage report, claws digging furrows into the table's surface. Explain to me, he hissed, how creatures with no proper war fleet have just crippled my advance units. One of his sub-commanders, younger and less scarred, shifted nervously. They are unpredictable, warlord. They don't fight like the others. Their tactics lack honor. Cortal slammed a fist into the console. Honor? I will teach them fear. Prepare the fleet for full assault. I will break these smiling mammals until they beg for chains. Back on the Resolute, Van stood alone in the observation deck, watching the nebula swirl like a living thing. The Dominion thought they could scare humanity into submission. They were wrong. Humans didn't submit. They adapted, evolved, and fought back with stubbornness that made even death hesitate. She spoke quietly to herself, or maybe to the stars. You came here thinking we're harmless. You got no idea what happens when you make us angry. She turned and headed back to bridge. The war was just beginning. The TSF Resolute drifted through the turbulent glow of the Veil Rift, its black hull blending into the swirling violet haze. Captain Arya Vance stood on the bridge, watching the fractured sensor readings roll across the holographic display. The nebula's charged storms were a shield, perfect for hiding, but dangerous if mishandled. Status on the other ships? She asked. Vanguard and Iron Star are holding formation, Captain, Lieutenant Hale replied, eyes scanning the feed. The Dauntless is about 5 clicks off our starboard. They're running dark. Vance nodded, gaze fixed on the shifting plasma currents beyond the viewport. Good. If we stay clustered, the Dominion will spot us, spread out, stay buried in the fog, and they'll waste time guessing. Or, Hale muttered, they'll just carpet bomb the rift and hope we're dumb enough to get caught in it. Let them try, Vance said, calm but razor-edged. The rift eats ships that aren't careful. They'll have to play by our rules in here. On the Dominion flagship Karatha's Claw, Warlord Cortal snarled as he examined the live feed. The rift was a maze of unstable gravity wells and lightning storms. Even Dominion cruisers struggled to navigate without shields burning to half capacity. Scan again, he barked. I want those mammals found. Now. His tactical officer's voice trembled. The nebula's interference blinds our long-range sensors, Warlord. They could be anywhere. Then make them come out. Cortal's claws flex against the console. Deploy the hunter drones. Sweep the rift. The officer hesitated. The drones might not survive the plasma currents. Then they die, Cortal snapped. Better them than my fleet. On the Resolute, the tactical display pinged. Hunter drones detected, the comms officer announced. Looks like half a dozen, spread across the rift perimeter. Vance leaned over the console, her expression sharpening. So they want to flush us out. Smart. Orders? Hale asked. She tapped her fingers against the edge of the display, calculating. We won't give them a clean shot. Bring us around to grid Delta 3. Launch decoy probes. I want them chasing ghosts. Decoys primed, the officer confirmed. Send 2 with high thermal signatures, Vance added. Make them look like engine burns. Scatter the rest with false data bursts. I want the Dominion questioning every blip. Hale grinned. You're making them chase smoke. That's the idea, Vance said, her eyes cold. We can't outgun them. We'll outthink them. The decoys shot into the rift, streaking off in wild patterns. Each emitted a warped echo of Terran engine signals. On the Dominion scanners, they painted a false fleet across the nebula. Cortal's eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. "They're moving too erratically," he muttered. The tactical officer hesitated. "Perhaps a feint? Or a trap," Cortal said. "Destroy the signals. All of them." Meanwhile, Vance's fleet crept closer to Dominion's flanking line. The dense fog cloaked their approach, every movement masked by the storms. "Contact," the sensor officer whispered. "Dominion frigates. 6 clicks out. They haven't seen us." "Perfect," Vance said softly. "Arm the rail cannons. Target their engines. I want them crippled, not dusted. Why not finish them?" Hale asked, leaning closer. "Because fear spreads faster than wreckage," Vance replied. "A burning ship tells a better story than debris." The ambush unfolded with surgical precision. 2 Terran ships fired from the rift shadow, rail slugs tearing into the rear of the Dominion frigates. Engines exploded in a blaze of blue fire, the ships spinning helplessly as alarms blared across their decks. On the Dominion bridge, chaos erupted. "We're hit. Ambush from the nebula." Cortal's fury ignited. "Find them. Hunt them down." Back on the Resolute, Vance gave the order. "Pull back, before their cruisers turn this sector into slag." Her pilot angled the ship sharply, sliding deeper into the rift's haze. The Vanguard and Dauntless followed, their drives powered low to avoid detection. 2 frigates crippled, the comms officer reported. Dominion reinforcements en route. They're scattering drones everywhere. "Let them," Vance said. "We're not staying still." Later, in the briefing room, Vance gathered her senior crew. A rotating map of the rift hovered in the center, littered with Dominion markers. "They outnumber us 20-1, Vance began, her tone even. "But they don't know this terrain. We do. We'll use that." The engineer, Commander Osei, folded her arms. "You're thinking of drawing them deeper, aren't you?" "Yes," Vance said. "The rift isn't just a hiding place. It's a weapon. Those plasma currents can fry a shield grid in minutes if you push too close. We'll use controlled bursts to funnel them where we want." Hale frowned. "And if it goes wrong?" "Then we improvise," Vance said simply. "It's what humans do best." The Dominion wasn't blind to the threat. On the Karatha's claw, Cortal paced like a caged predator. They fight like insects, striking, vanishing, striking again. "This is not war. It is cowardice." "Or strategy," murmured his advisor, an older officer with deep battle scars. "Perhaps they understand that victory does not come from brute strength." Cortal's snarl cut him short. "Strength is victory. I will crush their tricks under my claws." Hours later, another Dominion drone patrol entered the rift and vanished. Plasma storms tore through their formation, ripping the machines apart. Vance watched the sensor feed with quiet satisfaction. "They keep throwing metal into the fire," Hale said. "Think they'll get tired?" "Not before they bleed," Vance replied. "But every move they may cost them." Near the end of the cycle, Vance's fleet regrouped in a dead zone, a calm pocket in the rift where sensors barely reached. The ships drifted silently, systems dimmed to minimal power. Hale broke the silence. "You think Vorik is taking this personally yet?" "Oh, he's furious," Vance said with a half smile. "And that's dangerous. Angry commanders make mistakes." She stared at the swirling storm outside, her expression thoughtful but cold. "We're not trying to win a clean fight. We're trying to convince them that fighting us at all is the wrong move." The next attack came swift and brutal. A Dominion cruiser ventured too far into the rift, chasing a decoy signal. Terran ships surrounded it from the mist, striking hard and fast. Rail slugs punched through its shields, boarding pods clamped to its hull, and a team of Terran Marines stormed the corridors. When the cruiser's distress signal reached Cortal, he erupted with rage. "Enough of this. I want every gun aimed into that cursed fog." "Warlord," his advisor said quietly, "if we fire blindly, we risk hitting our own ships." "Then move faster," Cortal roared. "Find them. I want that human captain's head mounted on my wall." Back on the Resolute, Vance's crew returned from the boarding operation, carrying stolen data drives and Dominion tech. Worth the trouble? Hale asked, glancing at the blackened armor of the Marines. More than worth it, Vance said. We got their fleet layouts, ship counts, and supply routes. Now we know where they'll hurt the most. She turned to crew, her voice like iron. We've drawn blood. Now we prepare for the next strike. The Dominion's retaliation came like a hammer blow. Reports streamed in, outlying Terran settlements raided, supply ships intercepted, and then the worst news. The colony of New Thessalon had fallen. Captain Arya Vance read the transmission twice, her jaw tightening. The image of captured colonists kneeling under Dominion guard burned into her mind. 50,000 civilians. Engineers, miners, families. They hadn't stood a chance. Lieutenant Hale stood beside her, silent for once. They'll use them as bargaining chips, he said at last. Or worse. They'll use them as an example, Vance replied, voice low. Cortal thinks fear will break us. He's wrong. Rescue mission? Hale asked, already knowing the answer. There's no other option, Vance said, but we do this smart. A frontal assault will be suicide. The Resolute's briefing room was tense, the air humming with suppressed anger as the senior officers gathered. The stolen Dominion data hovered as a holographic projection, showing the occupied colony and the ship station above it. 2 cruisers, 3 frigates, and a swarm of drones guarded New Thessalon. Commander Osei frowned at the display. That's a fortress. We don't have the firepower to break their formation. We don't need to break it, Vance said. We'll slip past it. Through their own patrols? Osei asked, skeptical. Vance's eyes hardened. We'll make them invite us in. Hours later, the Resolute broadcast an open channel to the Dominion fleet. Cortal's face filled the screen, all ridged scales and teeth. His expression was one of smug satisfaction. Ah, the human captain. Have you come to surrender your people? A wise choice if so. Vance leaned forward, her expression unreadable. You want a show of strength? You've got it. I'm coming for New Thessalon. Cortal laughed, a guttural, grating sound. With what? Your scavenger fleet? I will enjoy watching your ships burn. You underestimate us again, Vance said calmly. That's a mistake. She cut the line before he could answer. The silence that followed was heavy but electric. Hale broke it with a grim smile. You just poked the beast. Good, Vance said. I want him overconfident. The rescue plan unfolded like a razor's edge. The Resolute and 2 escorts would feign a surrender, broadcasting false power-down signals. While the Dominion moved to capture them, hidden Marines in cloaked pods would slip past the cruisers and land on the colony. In the cargo bay, squads of Marines prepped for insertion. Their armor was matte black, weapons mag-locked to their backs. One young Marine, Private Jensen, looked pale as he checked his gear. First drop? Hale asked, kneeling beside him. Yeah, Jensen said, voice tight. They said the Dominion doesn't take prisoners. Then make sure you don't give them the chance, Hale said, clapping him on the shoulder. You fight smart, you come home. The Dominion took the bait. As the Resolute drifted toward the colony's orbit, broadcasting power failure signals, the Dominion frigates closed in like vultures. Shields down, weapons cold, the comms officer whispered. They're moving to board us. Hold steady, Vance ordered, eyes locked on the display. Wait for it now. At her command, the hidden pods launched, slipping through the rift haze. By the time the Dominion realized the Resolute's surrender was a trap, it was too late. Terran Marines were already breaching the colony's outer defenses. The firefight on New Thessalon was brutal. Dominion guards, towering reptilian warriors, clashed with the smaller but faster Terran Marines. Plasma bolts cut to the night sky, setting metal structures ablaze. Pushed through to the detention blocks. Sergeant Mason barked. Move, move, move. Private Jensen stumbled over debris, firing in short bursts. His heart pounded as a Dominion soldier charged him, swinging a blade longer than his arm. He ducked and fired point blank. The alien fell, but not before the heat of its weapon scorched his shoulder. Keep going. Mason shouted. Civilians first. Back on the Resolute, Vance monitored the operation through grainy helmet cams. Every flash of gunfire tightened the knot in her chest. She wasn't just a captain tonight. She was a gambler, risking lives on a desperate bluff. Dominion reinforcements inbound. Hale warned. 2 cruisers breaking orbit. Vance's eyes flicked to the tactical map. Get the Iron Star and Vanguard in position. Keep their attention off the ground teams. Engage with what? Hale asked. We're barely holding as it is. Smoke and mirrors, Vance said. Make them think we're stronger than we are. The boarding teams reached the detention blocks. Holographic locks flickered as hacking units scrambled to bypass Dominion security. Come on, Mason muttered, sweat dripping under his helmet. With a hiss, the door slid open. Rows of terrified colonists stared at the Marines, disbelief and hope mixing in their eyes. Terran Defense Force, Mason said. We're getting you out. Move. Jensen helped a young mother carry her child, scanning the shadows for any sign of pursuit. We're not dying here, he whispered to himself. Not today. On the Karatha's Claw, Cortal slammed his fist onto the control console as the reports came in. They're freeing the prisoners, his officer cried. Then kill them all. Cortal roared. Kill the humans, kill the captives, leave nothing. But it was too late. Vance had anticipated his rage. As Dominion ships turned their guns toward the colony, the Resolute opened fire, not to destroy, but to distract. Explosive decoys erupted in the cruisers' paths, forcing them to divert fire or risk damaging their own assets. The extraction was chaos. Dropships screamed through the atmosphere, Marines hauling civilians into their bays as plasma bolts scorched the landing zones. Everyone's aboard. Mason shouted over the comm, We're lifting off. Cover them, Vance ordered. The Resolute angled its rail cannons and let loose a barrage, punching holes in the Dominion's pursuit craft. The dropship shot upward, engines flaring against the dark sky. One took a glancing hit and spun out of control, but another swooped in, locking its clamps and hauling the damaged vessel to safety. The Resolute jumped to FTL minutes later, battered but alive. The rescued colonists crowded the hangars, some weeping, some silent with shock. Hale stood beside Vance, watching the families reunite. We pulled it off, he said quietly. Vance's expression was hard, at a cost. She thought of Marines who hadn't made it back, of Private Jensen, whose helmet feed had gone dark mid-evacuation. His absence weighed like a stone. Cortal stared at the empty space where the humans had vanished, his fury uncontainable. These mammals dare humiliate me, he hissed. I will burn their worlds until nothing but ash remains. Later, Vance addressed her crew in the hangar. We saved lives today, she said, her voice carrying over the murmurs of the rescued colonists. But make no mistake, the Dominion will come harder now. We've shown them we won't kneel. That makes us dangerous in their eyes. She paused, her gaze sweeping over her people. The cost of mercy is high, but if we give that up, we stop being human. The crew's silence was its own answer. The Dominion fleets regrouped along the rift's edge, their numbers a dark wall of steel and fire. Warlord Cortal stood on the bridge of the Karatha's Claw, claws scraping against the polished metal floor. Every report from New Thessalon stoked his rage. Rescued captives, lost cruisers, and Terran ships vanishing into mist like ghosts. They do not fight with honor, he hissed. They fight like vermin. His advisor, a grizzled officer with a deep scar running along his scaled jaw, bowed slightly. Perhaps, Warlord, that is their strength. They are unpredictable. Every strike bleeds us more than we expect. Cortal's eyes flared with contempt. Then I will tear unpredictability from them. Ready the fleet. We will crush these creatures with raw force. Aboard the TSF Resolute, Captain Aria Van studied intercepted Dominion transmissions, their content confirming what she already suspected. Cortal was done toying with them. His full fleet was preparing to descend on the rift. They're coming for blood, Lieutenant Hale said, standing at her side. What's the play? Vance's gaze was steady. Fear. We can't outgun them, but we can break them from the inside. If they see us as monsters, they'll hesitate, and hesitation wins battles. The bridge lights dimmed as Vance's crew prepared the next phase. A series of encrypted files began uploading toward Dominion channels. Grainy footage, deliberately chosen, of humanity's most brutal wars flashed across their feeds. Trench warfare, burning cities, nuclear firestorms, and archival images of Terran soldiers with cold, unblinking eyes. Broadcasting now, the comms officer said. Their fleet will see all of it. Hale leaned against the console. You think they'll get the message? Vance didn't smile. They'll see what happens when humans stop being nice. On the Karatha's Claw, the first clips appear across every Dominion display. Soldiers froze as footage of humans in ancient wars filled the screens. Thousands of years of violence compressed into minutes. Battles fought with teeth, steel, and fire. A younger officer recoiled. These aren't real, are they? They're archives, the scarred advisor said grimly. History. Cortal's spine stiffened as he watched the scene of Terran soldiers advancing through chemical gas. Faces masked, bodies falling in waves, yet still pushing forward. What manner of species does this to its own kind? He demanded. Predators, the advisor murmured. Not prey. Vance watched the reactions through hack comms. She saw the fear ripple across their ranks, the hesitation, the whispered questions. They're starting to doubt, she said quietly. Good. Doubt grows like fire. Isn't this a little dark? Hale asked. It's the truth, Vance replied. We're not saints. But if they think we're worse than they imagine, maybe they'll stop coming. The next strike came at midnight cycle. Using stolen Dominion codes, the Resolute infiltrated their fleet's outer perimeter, slipping past scanners under the guise of captured wreckage. Terra Marines launched covert raids, planting explosives and stealing data cores. One Dominion ship woke to chaos, explosions ripping through its hull, alarms screaming, human Marines moving with lethal precision. A terrified Dominion officer shouted over comms, "They're inside our ship. They move like shadows." The broadcast reached the Karatha's Claw. Cortal's teeth bared in fury. Find them, exterminate them. Back aboard the Resolute, the Marines returned with their spoils. Commander Osei laid the recovered data drives on the table. Fleet movement schedules, ammo depots, supply lines. We have everything we need to cut them open. Vance nodded. And we'll bleed them slow. Every time they think they've cornered us, we'll remind them what cornered predators do. Hale chuckled under his breath. You're starting to sound like one of the stories we use to tell to scare kids. Good, Vance said. Let them be scared. Meanwhile, fear was spreading through the Dominion ranks like a sickness. Soldiers whispered about humans, soft-skinned yet unyielding, fragile-looking yet fearless. They talked about the footage of Earth's wars, of firestorms and cities turned to ash. One crewman dared to speak to Cortal. Warlord, perhaps we should reconsider. They are not like other species. Cortal struck him down with single-clawed swipe. We are the Dominion, he snarled. We do not fear prey. But even as he spoke, unease crept into his eyes. The Resolute's next gambit was riskier still. Vance ordered a live transmission, sent directly to Cortal's flagship. When his face appeared on the screen, she didn't wait for him to speak. You think fear is your weapon, Vance said, her voice steady but cutting. You think showing us death will make us bend. But you don't understand us, Warlord. We're the species that stared into our own apocalypse and walked out stronger. We don't break. We snap, and when we do, you won't forget it. Cortal's claws twitched. You are nothing but animals. I will grind your kind into dust. Animals. Vance's tone sharpened. You haven't seen animals until you've seen a human fight with nothing left to lose. She ended the transmission before he could respond. The next few days were a relentless war of nerves. Vance's fleet struck supply ships, ambushed lone frigates, and vanished into the rift. Each attack was followed by a broadcast, a warning, a piece of human war history, or simply silence that forced the Dominion to imagine what came next. Hale watched the Dominion chatter through hack comms. They're starting to see us as something else. Not prey, not even soldiers, just dangerous. Good, Vance said. Dangerous keeps us alive. The breaking point came when a Dominion patrol ship found one of Vance's decoy traps, a derelict freighter rig with explosives. When they boarded, they found words carved into the hull in crude Terran script. We're peaceful until we're not. The ship detonated moments later, taking the entire patrol with it. On the Karatha's claw, Cortal stared at the burning wreckage reports. His fleet was bleeding from 1,000 small wounds, morale slipping like sand through his claws. His advisor spoke carefully. Perhaps this campaign is ill-advised, warlord. They are not what we thought they were. Cortal's growl filled the chamber. Then I will destroy them all at once. Ready every ship. We will strike the rift and end this. No more games. Aboard the Resolute, Vance watched the enemy fleets consolidate. She could see the storm building. They're coming with everything they've got, Hale said. Then we give them a storm they'll never forget, Vance replied. Her voice was calm, but the steel in it was unshakable. We're done hiding. It's time to show them what happens when humans snap. The rift pulsed with violent energy, its violet storms flaring like veins of fire. The TSF Resolute floated in its heart, surrounded by the remaining Terran ships, scarred, patched, but unbroken. Captain Arya Vance stood on the bridge, watching the Dominion fleet array itself along the rift's edge. Dozens of cruisers, frigates, and gunships formed a wall of iron teeth, ready to devour them. Lieutenant Hale stared at the tactical display, jaw tight. That's their whole war group. Every gun pointed at us. They think this ends today, Vance said, her voice cool and steady. And they're right, but not the way they expect. Commander Osei turned sharply. You're serious about detonating the rift? Vance nodded. We can't match their firepower, but the rift is a living storm. If we overload its plasma currents with the right energy spike, it'll rip itself apart. Every Dominion ship in that kill zone will be gone. And us? Hale asked. A faint smile tugged at Vance's lips. We'll be gone first, if we time it perfectly. Cortal stood on the Karatha's claw, watching his enemy through the void. The human, small, dark ships looked insignificant compared to his fleet, yet he felt an unfamiliar tightness in his chest. They had been underestimated before. He would not make that mistake again. Prepare the assault, Cortal barked. No warnings, no speeches. Erase them. Vance gathered her officers in the briefing room. The holographic map displayed the rift's unstable plasma flows, glowing in angry shades of red and orange. This is our trap, she said, pointing to the rift's unstable core. If we overload it using the Dominion's own weapons, it'll trigger a chain reaction. The explosion will tear the rift apart and take every ship inside with it. Osei frowned. That's a one-shot plan. Once we trigger it, there's no stopping it. Exactly, Vance said, which is why we lure them in first. We'll make them chase us deep into the rift, where every storm and current works against them. Hale folded his arms. You're asking us to dance with death. Vance looked him in the eye. No, I'm asking you to lead death straight to them. The trap began with bait. Terran ships darted out of the rift like shadows, firing pinpoint strikes before vanishing again. Dominion cruisers, enraged, pursued them blindly. On the Resolute's bridge, Hale smirked as another Dominion frigate dove into the storm. They're following like angry bulls. They're not used to being hunted, Vance said. Let's keep it that way. The first phase of plan unfolded perfectly. Terran ships weaved through plasma storms, their smaller frames able to slip through gaps that the Dominion's heavy cruisers couldn't manage. One after another, Dominion vessels followed, shields sizzling under the rift's energy surges. 5 cruisers now inside the perimeter, Osei reported. More on approach. Good, Vance said. Phase 2, initiate the spike charges. Terra Marines deployed magnetic torpedoes onto the drifting wrecks left from earlier battles. Each torpedo pulsed with a volatile energy core, designed not to destroy, but to overload the rift's natural plasma currents. Charges are set, the comms officer confirmed. Awaiting trigger. Vance's eyes narrowed. Not yet. We need them all in. On the Dominion flagship, Cortal scowled at the rift's roiling interior. They think to hide in storms? Cowards. Send the fleet in. Every ship. His scarred advisor hesitated. Warlord, the rift's energy surges. I said all of them. Cortal roared. End this. By the time the last Dominion cruiser crossed into the rift, the storm itself seemed to sense the coming violence. Lightning arcs flared across the void, painting every ship in a ghostly glow. They're in position, Osei said. If we wait any longer, we'll be stuck in here with them. Vance's voice cut through the tension. Trigger the spike. The charges detonated in sequence. Energy rippled through the rift, feeding into the unstable plasma currents. The nebula convulsed like a living thing, its colors bleeding from violet to white-hot gold. On the Dominion comms, chaos erupted. Unstable energy surge detected. Shields failing. We're caught. Pull them out. Cortal roared. Reverse course. But the rift wasn't letting go. The Resolute swung hard to port, engine screaming as it made for the rift's outer edge. Hale's knuckles whitened as he gripped the console. The whole place is coming apart. Keep us on course, Vance ordered. Full burn. Don't look back. Explosions lit the rift behind them. Dominion ships collided, their shields cracking under the surging plasma waves. A cruiser shattered into molten fragments, another torn apart by a lightning arc that split space itself. Come on, Hale muttered, sweat dripping down his face. Faster. The ship shook violently as the energy waves surged closer. Lights flickered, alarms blared. Osei's voice cracked over the comm, structural stress at 90%. We're not going to hold. Yes, we are, Van said through clenched teeth. Just a little further. On the Karatha's claw. Cortal roared in fury as his fleet disintegrated around him. His flagship shields flared, barely holding against the onslaught. This isn't war, he snarled. This is madness. For the first time, fear touched his voice. What are these creatures? The Resolute burst free of the rift just as the chain reaction reached critical mass. Behind them, the nebula erupted, a supernova of light and fire swallowing the Dominion fleet. Space itself seemed convulsed, the shock waves slamming against the Resolute and sending it spinning. Stabilize! Hale shouted, gripping the console. Working on it, the pilot yelled, hands flying over controls. The ship steadied, bruised but alive. Silence fell on the bridge as the view cleared. The rift was gone, replaced by a field of glowing debris and fading energy storms. No Dominion ships remained. Osei exhaled slowly. They're gone. All of them. Hale turned to Vance, eyes wide. You just wiped out an entire fleet. Vance's gaze was fixed on the stars. No, she said quietly. They did. We just pushed them far enough. Later, in the hangar, the surviving crew gathered. The rescued colonists from New Thessalon stood among them, staring at the crew that had risked everything for them. No one cheered. It wasn't victory that filled the air, only relief, exhaustion, and a grim understanding of what they had become to survive. Hale stepped beside Vance. Think Cortal made it out? Maybe, Vance said. If he did, he'll remember this. He'll remember what humans are capable of when cornered. Hale gave a crooked grin. Guess the galaxy won't see us as adorable anymore. Vance's eyes were cold steel. Good. Let them remember the cost of pushing us. Far across the void, aboard a shattered escape pod drifting in silence, Cortal nursed his wounds and stared into the stars. For the first time in his life, the warlord felt true fear. The humans had shown him something no other species ever had, a glimpse of what lay behind their smiles. They are not prey, he whispered. They are something worse. Van stood alone on the observation deck, looking out into the endless dark. The rift's glow was gone, but the memory of its fire lingered in her mind. This isn't the end, she murmured, but they'll think twice before coming here again. Her reflection in the glass looked tired, haunted, but unyielding. Because now, she whispered, they know exactly what happens when humans snap.